If I can help you anyway, if I've said anything half decent. Page 1, Act 1, Scene 1, let's do it. You've got to be quite good at chaos. You've got to be quite good at embracing chaos.
So, like, did your approach change when you were, while you were doing it?
Othello?
Yeah.
To Shakespeare?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Because, like, you know, with that theatre and that company and that director and that play, did it, because what, you'd done Cymbeline before?
Mm.
Right. And how did you find yourself changing the way you approach work? You approach the work, or what?
Well,
did you use what you had already kind of found? I'm always interested to know.
Well, I think first of all, Declan Donnellan and Michael Grandage work in very different ways. So the way they approach the rehearsal of a play like that, or a great text, you know, a big 5-act Shakespearean number.
Yeah.
You know, with Declan and Nick Ormerod, his partner and his designer, they turn up on day one and they have no idea how they're going to how they're going to do it. You know, they have a sort of very blank canvas, and they don't know what period it's going to be in. There's no model box. There are no costume drawings. There's nothing. They just sort of turn up with an idea of what the play might be about, and then they kind of explore that. So with Cymbeline, we sort of decided it was about family, and a sense of humility, like everyone in the play, Imogen, Posthumus, various people in Cymbeline, they go through a kind of a discovery of the fragility of the human condition. I mean, you could say that all Shakespeare's plays are about that, but that in setting out, in falling in love with each other, and in then setting out to harm each other, they then learn that there are other forces at work, essentially, and that there's this great humility in it, and there's a lot of loss in it, and loneliness, and then they're so surprised when they're allowed to be back together again at the end. So we kind of talked about that a lot, you know. Whereas with Michael, he doesn't really talk about those sorts of things. He just sort of, first day, here's a model box, here are the costume drawings, page 1, act 1, scene 1, let's do it.
Which do you prefer?
I
mean, not in terms of
which one do I like?
Direct you prefer, but like, the question I've been asking is, like, do you like to just get up and do it straight away, or would you prefer to kind of just sit around and really find what's in the text or find what's in the play?
Well, no, I love just doing it. I mean, I think that's the best thing about acting, is that you just get to do it. I think you can sit around at a table talking about the themes of a play or how you might play a scene, but until you actually get up and do it, you never have to commit. And as soon as you get up, you have to commit to it. And it's the same, you know, it's not that Declan talks about it, it's that he uses movement exercises or status exercises to explore, you know, Cymbeline's set in a court with a king and a queen and a princess, and you know, so where do you stand in terms of that hierarchy? And so you'll explore that with games and exercises and stuff. And it's the exploration of it, it's the doing of it, whether it's starting with the first page and the first scene, or if it's, you know, exploring around the idea of the first page and the first scene. It's still the same, it's still just getting up there and committing, because as soon as you're up, and I've just said this, but I can sort of never emphasize it enough, but you have to do it with your body and your soul and your heart and your head. You just have to just do it, say it, see how it feels, as opposed to think how it might feel if you did.
And did you always think that? Because when did you graduate?
2005.
And so is that something you found at college whilst training? Or do you find that once you are actually doing it professionally up on its feet?
I found that since I've left, I've much more trusting of my instinct. Do you know what I mean? I feel like at drama school there are so many. I mean, they're trying to help, but there are so many tools, and they could sort of lay out different toolboxes and of how to do Shakespeare or how to act, how to do plays, and sometimes you just have an idea, like it's just in your mind, and I've learned to trust that in that little spark of inspiration. Pretty much, that's the scent, and you've got to follow your nose.
So what would you say is your approach to Shakespeare now, as in at this point in your career? Do you have one?
I must have one somewhere. I read the play over and over and over again, and get a sense of. You try and get it's a very overall, very unconscious sense of what the play's about, where it's set. Is it a sort of page 1 of the newspaper type of plot, or is it kind of a page 10 of the newspaper type of plot? Is it a very grand, epic thing, or is it a very domestic thing? Interestingly, with Cymbeline and Othello, Cymbeline is huge and sprawling, and it goes from Britain to Rome to Wales, and there's a war in the middle of it. You know, it's like a big stew of ingredients, whereas Othello is a moment in time, and it's a much more domestic piece. And then after I've read it a few times, I do that quite simple thing of sometimes writing down what everybody else says about that character, and then deciding who I believe. If you see what I mean. So there's that. The first thing that someone says about Cassio in Othello is Iago, and he says, you know, an what's he say? I'm dry.
I don't know. You're in it.
He says Michael Cassio, a Florentine, one that never set a squadron in the field, a great arithmetician. Is the idea that he's a sort of a political animal, that he doesn't know what it's like to be a real soldier. I chose to just but I think Iago's lying in that speech. I think he's trying to manipulate Rodrigo. And I decided that Cassio was actually a great soldier and was a really good lieutenant. And in that whole play, or part of Iago's jealousy is about the fact that Cassio's been passed over for promotion in favour of Cassio. And I think that the reason Cassio gets that job is because Cassio's a bloody good soldier, and he knows exactly how to lead men, and he knows exactly how to command, and leads by example, and he's incredibly courageous. And Chiwetel and I talked a lot about that, you know, he watched the 10 episodes of Band of Brothers, just to think about military leadership and military kind of comradeship and fraternity. And if you're fighting with someone, if you're fighting alongside someone in a battle or in a war, it's like a kind of love. You're so close to each other because you see each other's strengths and weaknesses, and you see each other's fear, and you depend so much on each other. And we talked a lot about what Othello and Cassio's relationship must be like in the field or at sea, you know, on a ship, fighting the Turks and stuff. And that, you know, to be given the job of his lieutenant is you can't just be some desk jockey. You have to have proved yourself out there, you know. You have to have done your Johnny Wilkinson number or whatever. You have to have saved the world slightly. So I do that. I do all what does everyone say about me, and what do I say about everyone else? And then I think it's I leave it very open, because you never know how someone else is gonna play it. And that's what rehearsals are about, I think. I learn it, first of all. Right. So by the first day of rehearsals, I'm off the book, because I don't want to waste my time worrying about what I'm saying. It's very good to just absorb, it's such a discipline, and it's such a boring thing. You just learn it, just get it done. And then you can worry about why you say things and how you say them, but you don't have to worry about what you're saying, I think. And then you really start with a confidence, like, well, I know this part now, and there's a whole lot of things that probably will have gone into my head unconsciously just by learning it. And then you can respond, you can start listening and responding to what other people are doing. And with Othello particularly, because I didn't know until I met Chiwetel that he was going to play him as a North African Christian who had been employed by the Venetian Navy, and that Ewan McGregor was going to play Iago as a, you know, in his native Scots accent, and that Michelle is from Ireland, and that they were going to keep their Celtic root, which gave their marriage, or both of their characters, a sense of working class kind of a groundedness. I was like, so you've got a North African general and a working class ensign, and then Desdemona's in the middle of it, which means that if Cassio is from the same world as Desdemona, if you see what I mean, like if they, for want of a better way of saying it, went to the same university, you know, the same sort of posh university or something, or they're from the same society, they went to the same dances when they were children, they had this cousinly relationship for a long time, that they could be, Cassio and Desdemona could be open-hearted with each other and free-spirited and quite tactile in a way that they understood as perfectly normal and not sexually ambiguous, but that to someone from a working class background, someone from a North African background, those two, Iago and Othello's minds could collude in looking at this relationship going, actually, I don't understand that this touchy-feely thing, when what's going on for Cassio and Desdemona is perfectly innocent. And so questions like, in the playing of a part like Cassio, is he really in love with Desdemona? I mean, that's a question you simply have to answer, because he could be. He could know he was in love with her and pretend he's not for the sake of Othello, or he could not know he's in love with her when in fact he is, or, you know, there's a sort of, you have to answer that question in the playing of it, I think. But I didn't know the answer to that question until I arrived at rehearsal and I saw what Chiwetel and Kelly and Ewan were doing, and I had a conversation with Kelly which lasted about 2 minutes, saying, you know, do you think we actually really like, you know, do you think there's something going on? And we were both like, actually, I don't think so. No. I just think we love each other in a very free way, and there isn't anything sexual about it. So I'm still on the process, aren't I? So yeah, I don't really. That's as much formal process as I have.
And then what about?
And then it's just about specificity, you know, like there was a scene when there's a scene that cuts from the third scene of the play is a scene in the Senate where Brabantio disowns Desdemona. And the next scene is almost sort of 2 weeks later or 10 days later, when they've managed to sail from Venice to Cyprus and they've beaten the Turks. Some colossal sea battle. And you know, it is a real, the language of film is appropriate here. It's like cut to after the battle, because we haven't got the special effects to deliver the ships and the cannons and the battle. So, and it's all, and all the characters are arriving in Cyprus after the storm and after the battle. And I suddenly thought, you know, what's it like being at sea? And so I watched Master and Commander, the Peter Weir film, and that was, I mean, wrong period, completely wrong period, but it was really instructive for me, because it was like, it was men in boats, you know, at sea, in battle, and it filled in the gap for me. And so, and then I kind of, one day in rehearsal, I thought, he's just been at sea, it's a storm, he's going to be soaking wet. And I came in, I didn't even ask Michael about it, I just came into the scene, having popped to the bathroom, and sort of give myself a shower in the sink, put water all over the bathroom. But I covered myself, I just was soaking, and he was like, that's perfect, of course, yes. You're soaking wet, you've just come off a beat. You just, literally, you just moored, you probably had to jump out of the boat, splashing everywhere. And, you know, so it's like just details. I mean, what seemingly obvious details now, but when you're looking at a bone-dry text on the page, you just think, you know, you have to just make the imaginative leap.
So you are not adverse to grabbing things from stuff that, as you say, is not necessarily period, but stuff that will help you to find a way in. Absolutely.
And music always helps me, you know, like we said it in period, so we said it in Othello was written in 1604, and you find yourself over the course of 3 months, and your day is filled with December 2007, and so you're walking into work and it's Christmas shopping and people having coffee and having a party, and and you go into the theatre, and how are you going to get yourself out of the Christmas shopping and people having parties and Santa hats into this much more immediately dangerous world of an Elizabethan Venice. And so often I'll, you know, listen to music to just sort of get myself away from, you know, Google and the tube and all the things that are distractions to your belief in the moment that you're inhabiting.
How important is music and sort of rhythm and tempo, not in terms of like playing the piano, but one thing I've noticed is that a lot of great actors have a kind of musical sensibility which allows them to hear rhythms or tempi or pitch or climax. That seems to be, I mean, you dance, right? You're a dancer.
I have been known to dance.
This is common. This is common between a lot of very successful actors, I think.
Yeah.
There's a sense that you can appreciate rhythm and those things which, I mean, he writes in, you know, strict verse a lot of the time. Yeah. And so there is that element to it. Yeah. And I think it seems that to be able to pick up on that is quite important, or sort of helps.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of a muddle is made out of this in the way Shakespeare is taught, in the way it seems to come across, and it just is like music. You just have to say it, and it'll take care of itself, I think. And there's so much. There are so many blind alleys that you can go down if you start thinking too much about Shakespearean rhythm. I mean, we all speak in rhythm anyway. And we speak at the speed of our thoughts. And what Shakespeare does is he writes at the speed of thought. So you should just match him in a way. You just have to keep up.
So in terms of the go on.
Sorry. Can I just ask you, going back to what you said about how it's taught, what were your first experiences of Shakespeare, of the language, your initial experiences?
I suppose it was A-level. I did English A-level, so... And we did Othello, actually, for English A-level, so it's a play I've known for a while.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I saw the Sam Mendes production at the National with Simon Russell Beale, which actually knocked my head off. I can remember his Iago and will remember it for a long time. But I've always... also, I went to Stratford a lot and when I was in my teens, and I do remember being declaimed to. I remember being shouted at. And I remember not understanding. I remember thinking, ooh, they're talking Shakespeare at me and I don't understand it. Yeah. And then I remember the performances that stick with me are the ones where you go, oh, they're just saying it. And you know, and that's a real lesson to be taken from it, I think. You know, I remember watching the Baz Luhrmann Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. It just absolutely blew my head off because they were just saying it. I mean, it was filmic, and so you can't get away with the volume that they're speaking at in a theatre. You have to speak up a bit, but they were still saying it. And actually, this is interesting. I did a production of The Changeling with Cheek by Jowl, and that's a Jacobean text by Thomas Middleton. And there's an actor called Will Keane. I don't know if you know him, and he was playing De Flores, which is the great central part and one of the great sort of villains, if you will, in the classical canon. And it was my first classical job after leaving drama school, and he literally he seemed to break all the rules that I'd been taught about Shakespeare, that you mustn't breathe within the middle of a line, that you have to honour the iambic, that you have to honour feminine endings. I mean, there's all this clutter in your head about it. And he just used to say it. I remember him, there's a line he used to say, because De Flores is supposed to be intensely physically ugly. And Beatrice Joanna is meant to find him repellent. And he just has a soliloquy to the audience. And the line goes, I know this face is bad enough, but I have seen far worse with better fortune. I know this face is bad enough, but I have seen far worse with better fortune. And if you say it a bit quickly, maybe you don't quite understand it. And he just said, I know this face is bad enough, but I've seen far worse and with better fortune. And it was like he just made it up. And that seemed to me to be the way to do it. It's just to say it, you know what I mean? And not to declaim it or to sing it or to speechify it. And I think there's sometimes a tendency that people, producers, directors, actors, think that if they just say it, the audiences won't understand. But that's when they will understand. You know, it's like listening to any music. It takes you a while to get used to the genre, and then you're in. You know, and I suppose if you're sitting in a Shakespearean production, it takes you a while. You're like, okay, wait, we're speaking a bit of a different speed here, and they're speaking a more a grandiose language. But if you go at a pace, if you get a lick on it, that the audience will find you after about 2 or 3 minutes, and they'll stay with you. But if you slow it down and make it incredibly mannered, you don't know, no one knows what you're talking about.
Which you see all the time, or you hear it all the time.
Yeah, you see it all the time, and my experience on Othello was brilliant because there were a couple of really old masters at it.
Yeah.
James Lawrenson, who played Brabantio, had been doing it for 40 years, and he would just go, it's that thing of, I'm making too many words out of this, but speak at the speed of thought. See it as you say it, and think it and feel it and say it all at the same time. And I know it sounds difficult, but I don't think it really is that difficult. Do you know what I mean? And the verse will just take care of itself, because it's like Mozart or anything. It just plays itself as long as you say it right.
So jumping back a little bit.
Is that a good answer? Do you want me to answer that again?
No, that's a great answer. So jumping back, it's a nugget. That one. You can tick on that one. Yeah, so jumping back a little bit, going to, you said you studied with Othello for A-level.
Yeah.
What was your approach like at that stage? Was it very much like sit down and we'll go through it, or was it getting up straight away? Because one of the things which I think we're interested in as well is looking at how school plays such a big part in disassociating people from the language.
Yeah. At school, I had a very good English teacher who really made it sing for me. He was very passionate about it, but there were lots of people in my English class who were just like, oh, Othello, Shakespeare, and he was just really, really bored by it. But I think I got keyed into the imagery. I found the imagery extraordinary. My English teacher used to say that it's like he describes a cartoon almost. And I'll never forget the first time I read the speech about when Othello's describing the storm and describing the battle to Desdemona. He says, and let the labouring bark climb hills of seas Olympus high and duck again as low as hells from heaven. And I saw the cartoon, I was like, okay, the labouring bark, that's the ship at sea. Climb hills of seas, that's a big fucking wave. That's a huge wave. And then it goes down the other side and duck as low again as hell. It goes as low as hell. It's like, it seems like the world opens up and the ship's sliding down towards the bottom of the earth. And I just thought, the way he expresses that, like just a ship on a big wave, let the labouring bark climb hills of seas, Olympus high, and duck again as low as hells from heaven. I just thought it was amazing. I thought those images were amazing. They just knocked me out.
What were you afraid of at the beginning? Like your first thing was Cymbeline, right? Shakespeare.
Yeah.
As a young actor, having just graduated.
Pretty much, yeah. It was a year and a half out actually.
What were there things that scared you about tackling this?
Yeah.
What were there?
I think the size of it. I played 2 parts in Cymbeline. I played I played Posthumus, who arguably is the hero, even though he's deeply flawed and a bit of a latent misogynist. And also I played Cloten, who is a mixture of the clown and the villain of the piece. And they're both in love with Imogen, and she loves Posthumus, she hates Cloten. And I played, they're never on stage at the same time. and I played both of them, which is great because you get to sort of Jodie McNee, who was playing Imogen, you get to have a completely different relationship with the same actress. Also you get to be really, really serious and quite earnest, and then incredibly stupid and funny and absurd, and do loads of gags. And I think Declan asked me to do both the parts, and it created this sort of monster-sized part for any actor, like a kind of Richard III or a Hamlet or something. I don't even know if it's as long as that, but it's massive. It was the scale of it and the stamina required, because it's a bit like a sport, and that's what people don't think about performing Shakespeare. It's like running a marathon, because every emotion should necessarily take hold of your entire body and soul. And if you're on stage for 3 hours every night, that's going to take it out of you, you know. And especially you're performing at a pitch, so the stakes are always really high. There's always something, you know, you could be about to die at any moment, or you're at war with someone, or you've just lost the love of your life. You know, every night you're going through stuff that happens to people maybe once or twice or a couple of times in a lifetime, and you're going through this stuff every single night. And so you have to be fit. And I remember doing a lot of swimming and skipping, and I remember just thinking it wasn't a vanity thing, it was just about stamina. So that if ever I had an impulse to follow, I could follow it without fear of injury or exhaustion. I could just, I'll do that, you know. I don't know, I was...
A lot of young actors are in your position where you graduate and you get your big audition for the RSC or the National or whatever, the Globe, and you then go, oh fuck. Well, that's what I'm finding, like people I speak to. But yet you haven't done that. You've gone, right, okay, I'm going to kind of run with this. And you have fucking run with it. And I think for like the people who are going to be like young actors, little young actors, like, you know, for someone who has absolutely gone with it.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's an unanswerable question, but you obviously have something in you which has made you go, right, okay, well, I'm faced with these fears or these, you know, these kind of massive decisions to make, but actually I'm going to kind of...
I think my answer to this is all to myself is just like feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, it's like, okay, I'm a bit scared. Okay, I could fall flat on my face, but I'm just going to do it. Just go for it, you know. And I think I've always looked for inspiration outside. I'm never inspired by myself. I think if I was, I would be not a very good actor. But I'm so regularly inspired by other people and other actors and other stuff. You know, like I get inspired by sport, and I think it's all the same thing. Like you have a challenge to meet, and the test is how you meet it, because we all face these challenges, and you know, so like it's a mixture of watching how seriously Daniel Day-Lewis commits to everything he does, but also, you know, looking at someone like Johnny Wilkinson and how much pressure he feels and lives up to with every game he plays, or Steven Gerrard, or but other people as well, like my heroes like Al Pacino, and they just, I mean, okay, Al's, people would say Al has slipped a little of late, but you know, I'm always kind of just the devouring stuff. I'm always reading and watching films, and I find it so easy to be inspired by the courage, this pure, simple, naked courage of people. Like, it's going to be tough, but I'm just going to do it. And it's usually about instinct and just having the confidence to trust in your instinct, because we've all got it. We all know what life's about, really. That's why our capacity to be moved is so high. That's why we all go to the cinema, we all go to the theatre, because we all recognise what's so moving and extraordinary about life. And I think if you can recognise it, then you can also find it within you. So when I've had big auditions and stuff, I've always stuck my neck out and prepared a lot, and learnt it and made sure I'm not going to dry, and had an idea at least. So even if the director thinks it's the wrong idea, that I'll give like, oh well, I tried that idea, and you just have an idea about how something might be done, how something might be played, you know. With Michael, I mean, I remember The World and His Wife was up for Othello. I thought, how am I going to get a part in this? You know, it's got these huge movie stars in it. I'm never going to get cast in this. And I remember just thinking about the part and thinking, I really can do this. I know how to play this man. I know what makes this man tick. He's very ambitious in a very healthy way. He's very open-hearted. And the only scene he wanted to see was a reputation scene. And I just thought, how do you play that scene? And there's this, he says in it, he uses the word reputation 6 times, I think. But maybe that's the wrong count, but I thought, why does he say reputation 6 times? Oh, right, because it must mean that much to him. And every time he says it to Iago, it means he thinks that the last time he says it, it didn't have enough weight. It'd be like you were trying to convince someone of just something you really believe in. You know, when you really believe in something, you can't sort of say it enough, in a way. You have to keep saying it in different ways because you want to communicate this thing. And so anyway, my advice is just go for it, you know. And there's always stuff to be afraid of, but there's always stuff to trust as well. And usually that's your instinct, and you have to have a discipline. You have to stay open and be able to be directed, and to know when you might have made a wrong decision. But somebody said to me, agility is also the key. You've got to be agile. You can't be too fixed. You've got to be quite good at chaos. You've got to be quite good at embracing chaos, because something will happen that you won't know is going to happen, and you have to find a way of coping with it. That's on stage every night. That's in your life, you know. And I think the easier that you are with uncertainty and chaos, and the more you sort of know, oh, I'm fine with that, then you'll be fine. How's that?
It's great. Why are you helping us?
Why am I helping you?
Yeah.
I think you've got a really good idea. I think, when you told me about this film, I just immediately wanted to be a part of it, because I believe so strongly in it, because I've sat in, Michael Grandage has this phrase, which is that every night there might be someone sitting in seat B19 who is having their life changed. And there might be someone sitting next to them in B20 who is losing the will to live. And there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. But I have sat in B19 in theatres, i.e. the one where I had my life changed, and left a theatre or left a cinema, and my whole perspective on the world and my place in it and the people that I know and love and has been completely changed by the event that I've just seen. And so I just really believe in it, and especially if it's about Shakespeare, because he's so good. You know, he's like Chekhov and Tarantino and Aristotle, and there's all just like, and Virgil and Homer, and you know, he would be making films, I feel, these days. You know, he'd approve of people like Scorsese and Ford Coppola and Paul Thomas Anderson, who are just like synthesizing humanity into these big, fat, fantastic stories. And the more we can make those stories about right now, and the more we can make it look like Shakespeare, like people who are performing Shakespeare are making it up like they just thought of it. You know, the more, if you're playing Hamlet, you can just say, to be or not to be? That's the question. You know, the more you can just be like, it can just be a question in your mind that you suddenly think of. It's what keeps it fresh, in a way that novels don't stay fresh and films get dated, because both films and novels get printed, but theatre's like right now. And so, you know, when Chiwetel finished up, when he's in his last speech, and I thought that was like happening right there. And there's something really unique about that. So I guess anything I can do to help you to keep it all alive, if I can help you anyway, if I've said anything half decent.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, thanks for being here. Do you know what I mean?
No, it's an
it's
absolute
important,
pleasure.
I think. Do you want to be doing it in 50 years' time?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I love to. I think the parts that you play become like a snapshot of where you are in your life at that time. You know, and so I think it was maybe.
This is why people can come back to them, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And it was, I mean, quite interesting that I played a part like Cassio, who is kind of, I suppose, young and on some sort of career trajectory and trying to do the right thing. I mean, if I did something terrible, if I got drunk and went on stage and lamped somebody, that would be the end of my reputation as an actor. And that's what Cassio simply does in the play. And so I could really empathise, because I could just really empathise with him, you know. And I think then later on, as you get to play fathers, if you've had children, you understand what that's about. And so I think each part becomes like a time capsule of what was happening in your life. And you know, in 10 years' time, I probably won't be able to play Cassio, because I'll be over the hill and there'll be some other young buck coming up who gets the part and not me.
People have watched you and just like learned everything.
No. You know, so that's the fun of it, I think, is that you get to explore what's sort of going on in your life through these great parts, with words that are more articulate and more profound than you could possibly think up on your own.
Can you remember can you remember like a really shit audition that you did? Like there's an audition that you thought just went really, everyone's got like a disaster audition story.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I got a couple actually. I mean, I know.
And then sometimes you get the job.
Yeah, it probably looks to you like it's all been really easy. But if I could tell you that I used to keep, when I first left drama school, I kept a list of all the meetings that I went to, and I had to stop keeping the list because because none of the meetings. I mean, there were maybe like 50 meetings, maybe 100. I can't even remember, that were just not converted into.
But then there's that one point, isn't there, where you just... I put the ones in bold that I got, and then it started to get a bit bolder. Yeah. But I'd stopped keeping the list by then. God, let's think of some bad auditions. I mean, there was one audition I did for not for a Shakespeare play, for Our House, the Madness musical. Oh, yeah.
I never saw it, but I was on holiday in Cornwall at the time with my family. I've got two sisters, and we were in the middle of nowhere by the sea, and my agent called me up and said, "Look, on Monday you got do you know?
Oh my God.
You know, you've got an audition for the Madness musical, and you need to sing." I was like, "Okay, what do I need to sing?" He said, "Well, Madness song will be good." I was like, "Okay, I don't know any Madness, haven't got any Madness CDs with me. Oh no, what am I going to do?" So then I spoke to my sister, like, "What songs do I know? What songs do I know?" And we didn't know. We didn't really know any, but we had the Moulin Rouge on video or on DVD or something, so we watched it. And they said, "What about your song by Elton John?" I was like, "Great idea. I'll sing Elton John. It's not very Madness, but it's a nice old song. That's what I'll sing." So I walked in, having just bought the sheet music on Charing Cross Road, like 20 minutes before. Never auditioned for a musical in my life, and I can't sing. Wrong key, like literally. So, and then I didn't realize it was a real pop idol moment. Like there was this like panel of 7 people and the pianist, and I didn't realize I had to learn it. I couldn't just stand by the piano and read the words. So I stood in the middle and I started going, "It's a little bit funny, this feeling inside. Not one of those you can easily hide."
They're looking down.
And they were literally just sitting there, stony faced. There's one guy who just like...
That was probably Suggs.
I don't think any of them were in there. And the pianist was the only person who saw the funny side, and I started laughing. And it was on the second verse. "If I was a painted sculptor, ooh, but then again, no." And I really lost the words, and I started laughing, the pianist started laughing, and the other guys were just like...
But you have to, though.
Yeah.
You've got to
I mean, it was dire.
Something.
It was. I wanted to sort of like do that, you know, sort of record noise and say, "Just not, mate. Just stop. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for wasting your time.
Know.
I wasted my time.
Yeah.
We all
know it was a bit...
Don't even call me. Don't call my agent. Let's just forget it. Forget it. You know what I mean? But there are other auditions as well, like where I've I've fallen over or I've knocked something over or something.
It's amazing how unprepared people are.
Yeah.
I mean, you talked about being prepared, but
Yeah.
it's amazing how unprepared people are. You can't sort of overemphasize that. People do turn up. I mean, I've done that. We've all done that.
We've all done it. We just turn up like, oh, I'm really sorry. Actually, this is a great one.
Go on.
It's one of my earlier auditions. My best friend was at university, and he finished his exams for the summer, and he called me up and he wanted me to go out and have a drink with him, probably have a few, and just to celebrate the end of his exams. And I said, yeah, absolutely, I will be there. We'll have a high old time. We'll go out. We'll get everyone else involved. It'll be a great party. And my agent called me up and said, you've got this audition tomorrow, 10 o'clock. And it was at 5 o'clock in the evening. I was like, oh man, what's it for? And he went, it's for this it's this Disney film. It's a big American franchise. It's about ships and storms and stuff, and you're playing the lead. I was like, Disney, right? Who's the producer? Jerry Bruckheimer. I was like, oh, cool, okay, that's so cool, right? But at the time, I didn't really know about. I was just starting out. I didn't really know about the scale of things. I thought, well, they sent me the sides over, not the whole script, just the sides. And there was a bit with some pirate, and I get sort of hit. I get hit by a boom, and I was like, and I was reading it, going, oh man, it's not very good. The script's not very good. From the sides, I was like, oh, the script's not very good. So I did a couple of hours work on it, and then my mate Joey called and said, "Are you coming?" And I was like, yeah, I'm coming. So put it away, went out, got absolutely off my face. I mean, this is a good 7 or 8 years ago now, but the next day I walked in at 10 o'clock in the morning, very hungover, hadn't learnt it, and did it. And the casting director was like, after we did it, and we did it a couple of times, and she was kind of like, okay. Well, thanks for coming in. And she was American. She said, why haven't you learned it? Why didn't you learn it? I mean, this is going to be huge. I was like, I got the script at 5 o'clock last night, which I've since learned is no excuse. And she said, well, maybe you should learn it next time. Just think about learning it next time, and make a bit of an effort. And the film was Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
$1 billion
so later.
It's like, okay, that was something that could have happened that didn't happen.
Yeah, you don't do that again.
I don't do that again. You got to learn some one way or another.
Jeez.
But Orlando Bloom's Orlando Bloom. Who's to say I'd have got it anyway?
Maybe you'd have been better than him. Let's just leave it
comment.
at that.
Yeah.
Now,
any more questions?
Last thing. The film's called Muse of Fire.
Muse of Fire.
Muse
Henry V.
of Fire. And
would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
I'm asking everyone how much they can get through
Of the speech?
Of that opening prologue.
Okay, here we go.
Come on.
Oh man. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. Oh, for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. Something within this wooden O. I've done this speech before in drama school. Within this wooden O, think when we talk of horses that you see them printing their proud hoofs in the receiving earth.
What is your
thoughts that must
deck our kings.
Yes, for 'tis your thoughts that must deck our kings. Man, that's it. That's all I've got.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Pretty good. Fiona Shaw was probably about that much. Most people don't know.
I think Fiona Shaw nailed a bit more actually. She was on
Oh,
fire.
for a muse of fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention.
A kingdom.
A kingdom.
For a stage.
A kingdom for a stage. Within this wooden O.
No, you missed.
I have skipped a whole
Kingdom for a
bit.
stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold
To
the
behold the
scene.
swelling scene.
That's right.
So was the Monarchs.
Monarchs
Someone
get
will-
you every time.
So was the Monarchs.
Someone will get through it.